Hello, my friends. I hope you are doing very well. As we are filming this and taping this today is a gorgeous sunny Sunday afternoon outside. I just ran outside, washed the car, feeling good about having a clean car. I was thinking about last week I had my executive meeting and all these business leaders get together and we were communicating about how we're running our businesses, and this group is designed to help each other and inspire creativity and interrogate reality. And I was so impressed with each of them and how they are leading through tough times. And these are tough times, to be sure. There are people in my group that have lost co-workers to this, have sick family members, jobs are down, sales funnel is down, someone had to lay off employees. This is tough time. And through that, however, they are continuing to lead creatively and powerfully. And I'm incredibly proud of them. This is the third in our series about crisis-wise leaders, and these leaders that were gathered in that Zoom meeting are certainly crisis-wise, leading wisely through crisis. And I thought about communication. That's what we're going to talk about today is communication. Let's see. So far, we've talked about crisis-wise leaders understand context, and they're able to lead through a set of values so we don't react out of fear or immaturity or just being reactionary, but responding wisely due to some deeply held core values and a vision for ourselves and maybe for our companies. Today, I want to specifically talk about communication. It's impossible to separate good communication from good leadership. I would submit to you that you cannot be a great leader without being a great communicator. It doesn't mean you have to be a great speaker on stage, but to communicate effectively to your team, your family, is one of the requirements of leadership. In fact, I want to give you 4 examples of this. I want to hearken you back to some of the greatest communicators and talks in history. Let's see, Abraham Lincoln, Gettysburg Address, written on a napkin in a stagecoach. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth unto this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Powerful communication at that time. 100 years later, Martin Luther King, hearkening back to that communication, gave his now famous speech, I Have a Dream. Part of it, he said that one day my 4 little children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. That communication inspired a nation to rise up. We're still pursuing that dream to this day. One of my favorite speakers in times of crisis is Winston Churchill. Gave his famous speech, said something like, we will fight them on the beaches. We'll fight them on the landing spaces. We'll fight them in the air. He ended that portion with, we will never give up. We will never surrender. I think he almost single-handedly willed his nation to fight Nazism. More closely to our generation, Ronald Reagan. I think many of us of my age can still see him on the screen. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. Now, I'm not suggesting that you develop a skill set to go on stage or in front of a nation, but I am suggesting that in times of crisis, communication is a requirement. In fact, think about those 4 talks. Every one of those is in times of crisis. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, World War II, Cold War. We need great communicators as leaders. We don't see it very much. My challenge to myself, to you, is to hone your skills as a communicator. I'm going to give you 4 things today. 4 things to think about as you communicate wisely during times of crisis. This could be to your family, your staff, your team, the people around you. 4 things. Number 1, communicate reality. I've said this again and again through this time. This is not a time just to speak sunshine and roses. These are tough times. So communicate reality. I've said this before, and Max Dupree says, the number 1 responsibility of leaders is to define reality. So communicate the reality. One of my great leaders gathered his team and said, team, this is going to be a tough time for us. We have an option. We can lay some people off, or we can all take a 10% reduction in pay, and I'll even take more. That is great communication. Here's the reality of the situation. This is tough. We are all going to struggle. Our income, our revenue is going to be down. Communicating the reality of what we can do as a team. Communicate the reality of where you are. Let people know. They want to know. Even if it's hard news, communicate reality. Number 2, you need to communicate frequently. One of the things that I found as leaders, and one of our weaknesses, is that we will communicate something, a truth, and we will think that's enough, that they have it. I said it once, they get it. This could be training, this could be crisis, this could be new rollout for a product. I said it once, they have it. That is not the truth. Great leaders communicate frequently. Here's what happens, and I think you can see it in our nation. When we have a lack of information, or when we haven't heard something in a while, there is a vacuum of understanding. And what we as human beings do is we will fill that vacuum with the most pathological of thinking. We tend to go to worst case scenarios. Leaders, you need to fill in that gap, those dark places. You need to fill that in with really good communication. I would submit to you that you'll need to be communicating to your staff weekly during this time. This is what I've talked about with all my clients. At least once a week, touch base, Zoom call, phone call. They need to hear your voice, FaceTime, see your face, touch base with everyone on your team, whether it's your leadership team, if you have a smaller company, your entire staff. Touch base with them. They need to hear from you. Just check in on them. How are you doing? Is there anything I can do for you? Touch base with them on a regular basis. Let them know that you care. Communicate reality. Communicate frequently. Communicate collaboratively. This is the power of we. When you communicate it, I encourage you to get your team together and ask for input. Do you have any ideas of how we could face this? Has anybody been thinking creatively on this problem, how we can solve it, how we can utilize technology, social media, how we can utilize the digital space to help move our company along, how we can support each other better? One of my teams, one of my companies, they have their entire team contacting other people on the team just to lift them up. It's the power of we. How can we help each other? When I get all the executives together, it's not just me leading the conversation. These are bright, intelligent, creative people. I always ask for their input to teach each other. They have really, really good ideas. Communicate collaboratively. Easy for me to say. Communicate using the power of we. One of the things I've noticed during this coronavirus crisis, the loss of freedom and being told what to do by other people, and it impacts our lives. It takes a toll on us. We don't like other people outside of us making decisions for us that we have no part of. That's very hard for us. In fact, I was thinking about the American Revolution and the Boston Tea Party. The mantra of that time was taxation without representation. In other words, they didn't have a say. That's part of the growing frustration and resentment in our nation right now, is we don't have a say over these decisions that are impacting our lives. As a leader, make sure you don't make the same mistake. Use the power of we as often as you can. So communicate reality. Tell the truth. Here's where we are. Here's how it's affecting us. Here's where we're going. Here's where I think it's going to lead. Communicate frequently. Communicate collaboratively. And finally, I want you to communicate with hope. Communicate hope. People need to know that there is going to be an end to this. You may not know where it is, when it is, or how it's going to come about, but it's going to happen. Again, I was studying Churchill a week ago, and I was looking at that speech, and it was brought to my attention I want you to go back to 9/11, watching those planes fly into the buildings. Horrible, horrible tragedy. Winston Churchill and the people of Britain went through 51 9/11s. 51 9/11s. 51 times bombing raids from the Nazis came across the channel and attacked Europe and England. One of his greatest quotes says this: "Courage is going from failure to failure without losing hope." Let that sink in. Courage is going from failure to failure without losing hope. It was that kind of communication that helped Britain rise up. We're in something far less intense and far less devastating than the Nazi attacks on Great Britain and England. If they can do it, you can do it. Communicate hope. Communicate how we're going to do, what we're going to do to work through this process. Here's what we are going to do. Here's how we are going to get through this. Here's how I believe we are going to be better on the other side. Here's some problem solutions. Do you have any others? Listen, you're a leader. Part of leadership is great communication. I hope that during this time you will hone, practice great communication. All leaders do it. My name is H.R. Huntsman. This is Leader's Edge. I hope this has added value to you. I hope your family is safe. I hope you are healthy. I hope you're getting some traction during this distraction. And I hope that you come out better on the other side through this. Be safe. Love deeply. Now go shine.